Welcome to Mama Talk Talks A Different Take, a podcast where everyday people around the globe share a different take on everyday issues. I'm your host, Ebi Mambo, and I'm pleased you're joining us today. Welcome.
But I was even more devastated because it didn't work, and I was too embarrassed to tell my friends because they were very good girlfriends, and they kept asking, trying to find out, so how they go, how they go. We were at uni together, and so we saw each other every week, but I was just too embarrassed to tell them, and I kept putting off. I was like, no, I'll fill you in later. I'll fill you in later, but it's because it wasn't working. And so I ended up not filling them in. I just said, no, it didn't work this time, but we're still trying. And I left it at that because I just felt like there's definitely something wrong with me, but I don't know what it is. And I let it be. I had my first child, I had my second child, and things just carried on like that. I carried on having uh, painful sex, and that is actually called, it's a condition called vaginismus, which I discovered later. I didn't know it was an actual condition, and it
Neither
happens
did
to
I.
yeah, it happens to people who have been sexually abused, be it as a child or as an adult.
Oh, wow.
So just to define it, vaginismus is a condition that happens when anything is being introduced into the vagina, and the vagina involuntarily tightens its muscles, so it stops whatever from going in.
Yeah.
So whether it's during sex or whether it's trying to put in a tampon, it will just tighten the muscles, and so it's stopping it from going into the vagina, and that just makes it feel. I mean, if it's during sex, then it's going to be excruciatingly painful. Just to put it into context, it feels like someone is trying to force a broken glass into your vagina. That's literally what it feels like.
Oh.
And yeah, and so to think that I had been going through that for years, for at least 10 years of being in this relationship, and thinking that, oh, well, let me just endure it for a bit longer. But, trying to use all sorts of products to make it not hurt, not knowing that it was as a result of my childhood abuse.
Yeah.
So yeah, so had my first child, had the second one, and fortunately, when I had my second child, I put on a lot of weight. So it made me feel uncomfortable. But I say fortunately because then I decided to, with my husband's support and encouragement, I started jogging. I went out jogging once a day, and one day I went out jogging, and I decided to push myself just a little bit further than I had pushed myself the day before. And I had to stop because I got a feeling which reminded me of something that my girlfriends had told me that this was like an orgasm. And I had to stop, and I thought, wait, what just happened? Because I was pushing myself so hard up the last slope that I was jogging up. And I was like, wait, what just happened? And I said, it reminded me of what that should feel
What you
like
had
because
heard
I had
before.
never had an orgasm. So it just reminded me of what they described. They had been very detailed in describing it. And so I said, wait, but this is not a moment of intimacy. So can this
How is this
be?
happening? Yeah.
Right. So I rushed home and went onto Google immediately. By the way, Google became my best friend during this whole time because
I can
anything that came up,
imagine.
yes, I would always Google everything. So Googled it, can you have an orgasm during exercise? And there was a whole bunch of
First of all,
information. Look
what
at
were
you
you
looking for your
Googling?
phone. Look it up,
You said
and it
exercise more.
just yep. And there was like so many search results saying yes, it's very possible. It happens all the time. And I was like, oh, so it overwhelmed me. I was so overwhelmed, and I ran to my husband. He was right there, and I said, "Oh my gosh, guess what? I've been going through this for so many years. All these sexual difficulties." And I was like, "What's that?" He said, "What sexual difficulties?" I said, "I don't
Oh
even understand it
my.
fully now. I don't really understand it, but I've just had an orgasm, and and he was just confused. So he was like, "Wait, what?" So he felt so betrayed. He felt so like how come you've never told me any of this? So what we've been doing, you've never felt anything.
Oh, wow.
So when was the last time you desired sex? When was the last time you desired me? When was the last time you were aroused? So I told him, I've never ever, I just found out about the word aroused from my friends the other day. I didn't know anything about it. I don't have feelings, and it's not to do with you. I don't even fully understand it myself. It was horrible. From that point onwards, it was a whole year of we didn't like each other. I literally hated him because we were very vicious with our words and with our actions whenever we were around each other. He just called me a liar a lot, because he felt like, we've been together for 10 years, and yes, he knew that, sometimes it's painful, and but this to come out with this to say,
After
so
all
it
this time.
right. So for the whole of that year, it was like literally exactly 1 year. I remember because I was documenting it. It was horrible. So we didn't like each other. And the fact that I had just had a baby as well, recently, and I was going through postnatal blues. So that just made it worse. And I felt kind of alone. I mean, he was there, but I just didn't like him being around. He didn't particularly like me at the time. And so it was a very tough time. But the good thing that came out of that was the fact that I began to read self-help books. So I started reading self-help books just to help me out of that situation with him, to help me out of the fight, to help me to communicate better with him. But in beginning to read such self-help books, I started learning more about myself and the things which were not normal about me. And then I started realizing even more, learning even more about the possibility of me having been affected by my childhood abuse, which I had not even thought about before that
Yeah.
time. Thankfully, I guess I I started reading Cosmopolitan magazine. It's a magazine that's geared to, oh, you're smiling, so you know what it is. It's a
Ah,
women's
Cosmos.
magazine,
Yes.
yes. And I thank God for Cosmo because they have a huge, massive section on sex and relationships. They helped me out of it. Cosmo was like my savior in essence. In trying to find myself, I realized that I liked um, passing on knowledge, so teaching, and I had a passion for sexual health. Surprise, surprise. Obviously, I've been abused, so I feel like that's what led me into it, or got me interested in it. So
Yeah.
I got a job in working in sexual health clinic, and while I was there, apart from just learning on the job about sexual health, I also one day got the opportunity to uh, I was called up by one doctor just randomly because there was something wrong with this. There's something called language line, which you use as a professional when you have someone in the room and you need an interpreter to interpret the conversation for the client or for the patient. But language line, there was something wrong with it at that moment. And so they came to the office, and the doctor came to the office and said, "Oh, Manyi, thank God you're here. Can you please come and do a translation for this French patient that we have?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, sure, no problem." So went in, and that was really an eye opener for me because in summary, she turned out to be a patient who had been raped 2 years prior. She was Muslim, and she had been a virgin before she was raped in France. She was she was raped and kidnapped and locked up for 3 weeks. So the rapist, raped her for 3 weeks, and then left her by the roadside. So she went to the hospital, but she never told her family or her parents that she was raped. And she said because they would, probably hurt her. So then after that, she got into a relationship with this guy. Still unbeknownst to her family, they didn't know she was dating because she was not allowed to in her family. And so while dating this guy is when she came to the clinic on that day because She said she had just been having painful sex. And she described it in the same words which I always describe it in, that it feels like someone is putting a glass bottle into your vagina. And so I'm doing the translation. I didn't even, I was focused on the translation, not really thinking much about what she was saying. And they did an examination on this woman and came up with, you have something called vaginismus. That was the first time I heard of it. And there are many people out there who have suffered from this for years, and they have no idea that it's even a thing or a condition. You just think, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
mhm.
You think this is
Um,
how it is, and then you just say
yeah,
it's your
yeah.
tampi.
Exactly. So that was that. That was just that aspect. But as for other things, it's it's a whole bunch of difficulties. So calling it sexual difficulties is just like the umbrella term. So
Yeah.
there's you look at you basically behold, or you look at a penis and you're taken back to when you were being raped, because the penis was usually here in my face.
And that
And
was the
so
weapon.
right, and so as an adult, I see it and I'm immediately taken back. It's not a good place to be in, especially when, this is my a loving partner of mine, and I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm scared because it reminds me of the past.
Yeah.
So I went through that a lot. I also experienced what is called dissociation. I wrote about it extensively in my book. So dissociation is basically what happens. It's a detachment, an emotional and or physical detachment of your mind
Yeah.
from the present moment. And I used to go through that without even knowing that that was what was happening, because to me it was normal. So I learned about it in therapy when I described it to the therapist, to say, I said, there's something that happens to me every time was my husband and I are supposed to be intimate. I just snap out. I'm
I
not
go
there.
for a walk.
Yes, I'm there. I can see what is happening, but I'm not there. And then when it's finished, when it's over, I snap back in. And so, but now that my husband is aware that this is what used to happen, he described what I looked like to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I was there, and but I wasn't there. Like, you're
You're
not
in presence.
participating, not present.
Yeah.
It's like almost, yeah, just not present. That's it."
Yeah.
And that was because it happened to me as a child, because I was abused as a child. That was my brain's uh, way of coping with the trauma. So, in order to protect my brain, myself as a child, from experiencing that high level of trauma, my body shut down in order to stop the trauma from penetrating even more, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because
Your mind basically vacated the
that's it.
premises.
That's
Yeah.
it. So because the therapist explained to me that as a child, your coping mechanisms are not yet fully developed. So
Yeah.
that is the one of the main ways in which your body will react in order to protect your childlike self state from getting even further damaged. So every time I was being abused, sexually abused, every time he was raping me, I always dissociated. So to me, that became normal. And as an adult, I did the same thing during sex, but I didn't
Yeah.
realize that other
You're
people don't
doing the
do that.
same thing. Yeah.
Right. Because I didn't, that was normal
Wow.
to me. So I didn't realize it, but fortunately, I mentioned it in my therapy session. And I didn't even mention it like as if it was a concern. I just mentioned it in passing.
Mm.
And then the therapist picked on it and went back to it to explain to me that, that is actually something called dissociation. And s- uh, but that also, it it disappeared on its own. when I started to work on myself.
Yeah.
So how it disappeared was when I learned how to retrain my brain to not perceive sex as a negative and to start looking at it as a positive and as something that is happening with a loving partner, with someone who cares about me, with someone who
Yep.
loves me. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I was able to start seeing it as a positive, the dissociation stopped. It stopped on its own. It took
Yeah,
quite
because
a long time.
I imagine it was because there was no need to protect yourself. And so
Right.
naturally your defenses went away.
Fizzled away, yes.
Mm.
So I know for a fact that many women go through dissociation. They experience it. It seems bizarre. They don't really know what's going on. It makes you feel so weird when it happens, and you snap out and snap back in, and you're like, wait, what just happened? And you can't understand
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So yes, so that goes away with retraining your brain. But
Yeah.
during that time when I started reading Cosmo magazine and learning about my body and myself, and then subsequently went into therapy and continued reading about self-help books, and then started working within sexual health at the clinic, and so all that just came full circle for me.
Yeah.
Everything tied in, and it was perfect. Everything worked out because I was on it. I was very determined because of my kids. I was so determined to get myself out of it. I just could not do it anymore. I couldn't keep living like that. Like it's not a nice place to be in, not feeling anything. Like you're supposed to be aroused and you don't feel anything. It's like,
Yeah.
what is wrong? It's a very sad feeling to not be able to feel in that way. So I needed to retrain my brain, and I did. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of under, reading and understanding what is going on, and knowing that you can do it, and just keep trying and trying and trying. And I say this because many women have reached out to me anonymously and not anonymously, and this is a problem. And it doesn't only happen when children are sexually abused. It happens in adulthood as well, and you go through stuff like that. So it's all in the mind. It's all in the mind, and it takes a lot of time, but it's
Yeah.
very, very possible to regain intimacy after rape. So for me, I believe that my case was very unique and it happened in childhood, but here I am, and intimacy is possible. So that is, I guess, in a nutshell, how it was for me and my husband. We made it through, but also he was extremely supportive, like just very understanding and very supportive. There are many times when, for many years, when you're in the moment of intimacy and I felt like I was being raped and I'm crying under my breath.
Wow.
Yes, a lot. I felt it, and but I'm trying to make sure that he doesn't see that I'm feeling that way because he was very perceptive as well, so he would notice. But I'll try not to let him see that I'm crying, and but then he would immediately stop and switch on the light, and I'm trying to dry my tears because I didn't want to hurt him. It's very difficult. I don't want him to feel that I'm hurt because I'm trying to protect him, but
Yeah.
whereas I should be telling him so he can help
So
me.
you can work through it together.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it's a guilt thing. You feel very guilty, and then you feel like, okay, I'm going to try not to feel guilty, so I don't want to make him feel guilty. It's a mess. It's a
Yeah.
mess. So having his support through all this was amazing. It's very helpful. So it helps if you have support.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
for 10 to 11 years, I could not bear the feel of his skin on my skin. So I always insisted on having clothes on constantly, always. So that was normal to
Wow.
us. Yes, it was normal. And at that time, when I in all during all those years when I insisted on having clothes on, I didn't particularly attribute it to my childhood. I just knew that
Yeah.
that's how I felt. It made my skin crawl if your skin touched my skin. And he didn't understand it either, but we just went with it. So that was supportive. He didn't force me to, no, 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 take them off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So even despite the fact that I didn't understand it and I didn't wasn't able to explain why, he just was supportive. And to be honest, he didn't really care that not care, but it wasn't a big deal to
Big deal.
him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I think he just loved me enough to say, you know what, if this is what she wants, okay, let's do it. And
Mm.
so yeah, so it's been a long, long road, and now
In
we're
all ways.
oh
In all ways.
yes, and now we're not there anymore. We're all good now. Everything is good, fortunately. It's all worked out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I just I'm trying to think back to the list of questions I had, and I think we've covered them
kind
in
of.
all the different areas we've talked about.
Mm,
Before we go, I do want to ask you, your children,
yeah.
is this, do they know mommy's life story with regard to this? And how do they engage it, or is it something that you said I'm just gonna wait and talk to them about it when they're older and perhaps can understand it better?
So I have three kids. They're 12, 10, and 7. The 7-year-old has no clue about what happened to me. The 10-year-old knows that doesn't know what happened to me, but he knows that what I do in my life, what I'm passionate about, is protecting children from being hurt by others. Especially adults. So that was my way of introducing it gradually.
Yeah.
So that's all the 10-year-old knows. And then my 12-year-old, who is a girl, she's 12 but going on like 18. So I told her about it when she was 10. So that is when I first published my poetry book, my poetry
Okay.
collection. And she was very much into books. She liked reading, and she was so proud of me for publishing a book. And so she wanted to read it. And I explained to her that you can't read the poems right now because they're not exactly appropriate for your
For
age.
you.
And
Yeah.
yes, so and gradually at the time when she was 10, I started explaining to her age appropriately because I couldn't just tell her everything at the same time
Ooh,
at once.
a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as of now, she knows what happened to me. She's cried a lot about it, but she doesn't cry anymore. So like for now, she knows I'm doing. They all know I'm talking to you here, and they know she knows what I'm talking about. And
Okay.
she actually um, tells her friends about the work I do very proudly, and she's even given her friends some tips about their bodies. Don't let people see you naked because people can hurt others. Just be careful. So she's kind of smart like that.
Getting into
Um,
that. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
but she doesn't know that all these details.
And oof,
Yeah, yeah.
if anything I took from the last week is that it's a lot for adults. What about a child?
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah.
So, in the time that we have left before I say goodbye, you are working on a number of projects
Mm,
in this area. So, why don't you tell us some of the work that you're doing,
yeah.
including your organization?
Yeah, so my day-to-day job is I work as a domestic violence advisor for an organization in the UK. So just working on cases with women and who are going through domestic violence and trying to make their situations better.
Yeah.
Right. I have my own organization called KEBS, which is based in Nigeria. So it's at the moment I'm working remotely from the UK. So basically, it's also a service offering services for children who have been abused. At the moment, there's a hotline, a phone number, which if there's any incident of child abuse, people in Nigeria can call that number. You can even either call or send a WhatsApp message to the number, and you will reach me immediately. And I will then call them back, or yeah, contact the person and give them advice on where exactly to go to get help. So it's nationwide, so around Nigeria, and there's so many police stations and hospitals and sexual assault referral centers that you can be referred to. So I do the referring. So I'll send you there and contact them to and tell them to expect you. And they provide lots of and it's a children's service, so they'll provide services like counseling and emotional support and medical checks, because when a child is abused, they need to be examined and hopefully evidence taken. But most importantly, they need emotional support and
Yeah.
therapy. So
Yeah.
I will provide long-term emotional support. So I stay in touch with the child, and so it's like counseling, but it's long-term. It's more long-term than the traditional counseling. Um, and my organization, you can find out more about my organization on it's kebsafrica.com, and I'm on social media as well. And yeah, so for now it's based in Nigeria, but we're setting up branches in Sierra Leone and in Cameroon.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other one in
So
Cameroon.
yes, yes. So that's that for now. And I also am working on creating workshops and training packages. So in the near future, what I'll be doing is giving talks and giving trainings to police officers and in schools, and to just laymen and civil servants, at different organizations, on
Yeah.
how just to raise awareness on this.
Yeah.
Because yes, I can do it through these interviews and on social media, but not it doesn't get to everyone. So
Everybody. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
so I'm trying my best to reach as many people as possible. So that's another thing
Yes.
that's soon coming up in the near future. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Money. I mean,
Yeah.
to go through that experience and to come back into the space and to give back in the way that you're doing is admirable, is commendable. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for teaching me, right? I think as I was talking to people about the three-part series, I was saying the thing that struck me the most is that you were very masterful in how you talked about the different stages.
Mm.
Because no matter where a child is in that process, you gave us the tools to, and no two situations are the same, but I feel now like I can look at a progression and catch some things regardless of where it is, right? And so for that, just thank you.
Yeah.
I think the work you're doing is incredibly important. We'll continue to support you here on the show as best we can. And I just want to say big, big, big thank you to everyone who watched this and who shared it. I was looking at the analytics, and this was shared so widely via WhatsApp
Wow.
that it makes me feel like, the mission that we set out on when we first did this together was getting that word out, and we have done that. And I
Yeah.
think more can be done. But I do want to just say to everyone who's been listening in, thank you for listening. Thank you for the outpouring of love and support and outrage for Manyi. And I know a lot of people who went to school with you and I just said, we didn't know. I didn't know. I
Mhm.
didn't know. So for your bravery, thank you. And let's just continue to share the message. I think it's great to hear what you're actually doing with the organization, because a number of people said to me, conversation is good and it's important as a first step, but then what?
Exactly.
But then what? So I think the fact that you have the organization, and if there are ways in which people can support that, whether it's through donations or through time, because if you're supporting it from the UK, maybe people can support it from different parts of the world.
Hmm.
Let us know, and you can always come back here and share
Of
that,
course.
or on our website. So I just want to thank you again for your bravery, your courage, for telling your story, and for really, I'm deeply, deeply, deeply passionate about protecting women and protecting children. And this is an important part of that work. So for me, on a very personal level, thanks for your voice in this conversation.
You're very welcome. And I just want to say thank you so much for giving me this chance to reach even more
Of
people
course.
with my story because I can, it's very obvious, it's very clear to see that it's reached so many more people and they've been deeply impacted and hopefully they've learned something
Yeah.
from my story which will just help to perpetuate the message which is that to just keep an eye on your kids because in most of these cases it's preventable, it's something that's preventable, we just don't even pay attention. And one last thing I want to say as well is just that um, people usually feel that when you talk of neglecting a child, it's if you leave a child with in the house or in no house with no food, no water, no clothes. That's not the only form of neglect. If you're
Yeah.
there, present every day, but you're not engaging with the child at all, you don't know what the child is up to. You don't know what they are discussing with the adults or adolescents who are around them daily. You don't know how they feel in particular situations. You know nothing about them really. You're not keeping up with them, with what they're doing or saying. That is a form of emotional neglect. So just take note that being there, present every day, doesn't mean that the child will not be neglected. They still can be neglected.
Yeah. On
So
a
what you
different
need to do
level.
on
Yeah.
different levels. So it's what is important is to tune in to the kids and make sure you're at the same wavelength. You know exactly what they're doing, what they're seeing,
Mm-hmm.
what they're watching, who they're interacting with, what the person is saying back to them. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of work because the thing is,
Parenting is hard work, but
yes,
I
if
call it as sacred work.
mm-hmm. If you're not doing it, if you're not doing that interacting, someone else will step in and interact with the child, and it may be the wrong
Yes,
person.
yes. In the in the episode released, I think 2 or 3 days ago, I had a teacher come on and talk about
I watched it,
education,
your
right?
son's maths teacher, yes.
Yeah, it was interesting because he said something, and it was that you are your child's partner on the journey of education. And if you don't step into your role, who's stepping into it?
Yeah,
Right? Because someone will, and who is that person, and what are their
exactly.
intentions? And do you so as you say that, it reminded me of what he said, and there are such parallels around just the level of engagement it requires to really make sure that on the one hand our children are safe, and on the other hand that they are getting an education, and these two things are not separate, right? It's
Yeah,
like
oh, it's
the
intertwined.
yeah, parenthood is full on.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
like
It is. It is. So
yeah,
yeah, let's just keep our eyes on the ball and yeah, hopefully we will create change
yeah,
because this
yeah,
stuff is just you don't want your child to go through anything remotely like this.
like
It
this.
can
Yeah,
ruin a child's life. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
On that note,
Mm,
it's been wonderful to have you, Mama Talk Talk. Come back anytime.
well done.
And for our listeners, dial in next week for an all new episode. And by the way, season 2 kicks off in October. So I'm super excited. And we'll keep the conversation going. So, Manny, take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye.
What events transformed your life? Hi, I'm Abi Mambo, creator of Mama Talk Talk and host of Mama Talk Talk's A Different Take podcast. Join me this fall as I speak to 9 engaging and fascinating people around the world to learn what their defining moments were. But first, catch a sneak preview.
actually said, if anyone asks you for documents, tell them your dad has it. And I remember being like, that's weird. And then he was saying, you can't tell anyone that we're here illegally.
We felt it immediately.
It almost is as if the moment you step into a room and you are very clearly overweight, it's like this conversation becomes open for everybody to think about what you should be doing to help yourself.
Dave, the vice president, called and said, you need to come to my house right now. And went to his house, and it turns out someone had found what they thought to be a bomb.
Baby Smile at 6 weeks, and this was the 6-week email. It wasn't like she was late, but maybe we had a sense that something was perhaps wrong, because it struck me so hard.
So the first year was good. The second year, we kind of broke even. The third year, it went down.
And he turns around the tissue box. On the other side of the tissue box, he created a handmade sticker in advance, which read Dahlia's tissue box.
I was working in the emergency room, and all of a sudden I realized I was in the emergency room bed and being carted off to have an emergency surgery.
And so it was, at the time, it was difficult, because you sort of dragged into a situation that is not of your own. Your motives are questioned, your ethics are questioned.
The person that was walking around was not me. It was just a silhouette of me who I could not recognize, and that scared me. That where had I gone? Where had I lost myself in this journey that was supposed to be beautiful?
Well, being a mother and trying to be a leader were two difficult things at this time, because I'm trying to process how I'm feeling. I'm angry, I'm upset. I feel like I need to do something, but I don't know what to do.